Hey guys, I know a couple of you missed the Nearpod session and asked me to give you some more information. If I'm always happy to sit down with you, but if you don't have time for that, here's a short video just to kind of get you caught up so you can start using it before we have Nearpod 102 in a couple weeks. So when you first came into the room, I had this on the screen if you came to the training, and in that, I had you go to nearpod.com and just put in the code in the code box. You didn't have to sign up. You didn't have to sign in. So just like the kids, when you start a lesson, they just put in this code to join the lesson. Now, I already had this skipped forward, so let me skip back. Sorry, guys. And this is how it would have looked when you started. Now, when I click these arrows, it moves on your screen as well. So if you're presenting a Nearpod lesson to your students, they put in the code on their device, so on their iPad or their Chromebook, and you are in control of the lesson. You control what slide they go to or what activity they're on. So when I click, it'll change on your screen. So I brought you guys to a sign in. You can't sign in because you're just watching the video, but this is where you would have signed in. And then I had a slide about what Nearpod is. Basically, I hate to say the word PowerPoint because I hate PowerPoints, but it's like an interactive PowerPoint that encourages students to participate and keeps track of their participation. And it also, if you have like a quiz or a poll and things like that, it automatically grades it for you. So I'm going to show you some of the cool tools that Nearpod has to offer. So instead of just like telling you about each tool, I'm going to take you through a sample lesson that you could actually download from the Nearpod library. The cool thing is you could get started today and not have to create anything. You could download lessons straight from there. You can edit that lesson. You could add to it, take away, or you could create your own. But I like sometimes just downloading a lesson and using it with my students. So here's an example of one about Susan B. Anthony, and Nearpod and Vocabulary actually have partnered together. And so this is an example of one of those lessons made by Nearpod and Vocabulary together. So this is an example of the lesson, and it would have this at the front, but you can take out some of these slides if you don't want your kids to read them. And then it's going to ask me, so this is the teacher device that I'm controlling it at. If you don't want we're about to watch a video, and if you don't want the video to play on all of their devices, like if you had it on iPads, you don't want to play it on all their devices because then you'll hear all the sound. However, if you're like a few of our teachers who don't have smart boards or ways to project right now, I would click all devices so all the kids could watch it. But if you have something to project with, I always click this device only so the kids have to watch it. And then we would watch the video about Susan B. Anthony. So it's all embedded here in the Nearpod lesson. They don't have to go to a separate link. It's all here in one spot. So they could watch it. We're not going to watch it just for time's sake, but that's how it has an embedded video. The next slide, I'm actually on teacher view when I'm doing this. So if you're presenting and you don't want the class to see the results, what I'm about to ask you is it's a pair term activity. So I'm going to go up here and click on switch to student view. So this is what the students would see. So we just watched the Susan B. Anthony video, and now we're going to do a matching pairs activity to go with all the vocabulary words we just learned. So pair the term with the image representing an issue Susan B. Anthony worked on. So the kids would go through and maybe they'll say equal rights, women's suffrage, gender pay gap, all that kind of stuff, and they would match the terms. Now on the teacher end, and I don't have anybody who's in this lesson right now, but if I switch back to the teacher view, on your end later, you could see who participated, how many tries they took, and how many matches they got right. So even if they got 5 out of the 5 matches, but they took 37 tries, you can kind of know that they're playing around and not staying on task. Okay, so the next activity that they have in this lesson is VR. And so you don't have headsets in your rooms, but if you're using iPads, the kids can lift the iPad and turn around like their goggles, or they could just click and drag on the screen. But in this example, they put a VR or 360 picture of a voting line, and the question was for the kids to think about, what do you think that Susan B. Anthony would think about this voting line? So here's an example of a 360 picture that you could add into the lesson or that are in some of the lessons. Another example of an activity that the kids could do is called a draw it. So again, I'm going to switch back to the student view so you could see what you would have seen on your screen if you were at the training. So a draw it activity, basically the kids can draw with their fingers. If they're on the iPad, I told some of the teachers in our session that if they wanted to use some of their EEF money to buy a class set of styluses. They're really cheap. You could probably get a class set for 10 or 20 bucks. And some kids prefer using the styluses when they do activities. So on this one, they were supposed to draw a memorial to commemorate Susan B. Anthony, so they could draw it here. This is just me using my mouse. It's not super great, obviously, but they could draw it here, and then they could add the text box over here to answer the question. So what will the title of the memorial be? Where will your memorial be located? All of these kinds of things. So this is an example of a draw activity that some of the lessons might have. Okay, and then here's an example of a quiz. So the kids would go through the quiz and they would answer, and they can actually click through and click next. It's like the only part that they can control in this, and they can answer all of them. On the teacher view side, so you want to have that on student view when it's on the board, but on the teacher view later, you could see the students, the score they made, and exactly the answers they chose for each one of these. And then over here, it actually makes a graph for the percent correct, incorrect, and no answer. Right now, it's not showing it because I don't have anybody logged in because I'm just doing this at my computer, but that's where you would see your results. And there's reports, I'll show you that in a minute, that you could pull up later after the lesson's done if you wanted to take any of this for a grade or show parents student participation in their grades and things like that. Here's another example of activity. It's a poll, works just like the quiz, except it's not graded. And then at the end of the presentation, I had you guys all practice logging in, and then picking a lesson to edit it, not creating one from scratch because that can get kind of complicated, and that's what we're going to go over in 102, but just picking one and learning how to download it. If you're having trouble signing in, let me know. Do not go to create an account because we've already created an account for you. If you're brand new this year, the ending is at starkvillesd.com. If you've been here more than a year, it'll be at starkville.k12.ms.us. And if you can't remember your password or you didn't get that email from Nearpod back in September about using that login, just email me and I will reset your password and get you set up. So when you log in, and I'm actually going to log in as me, and my screen will look a tiny bit different because I'm a district admin and not just a district user. But I'm going to show you what I wanted you to do. So what I was going to ask you to do, and I'll pull up a new tab, is I was going to ask you to log in and then search for a lesson. So I was going to have you go to the left and click on Nearpod Lesson Library. So this is the screen that you would look at, and you can sort it by subject, by grade, resource type, like full lessons, just tests, warm-ups, things like that. And you can even go up here and sort it by standards if you want to. So for example, Ms. Roberts came to the training and we were talking about some of her rainforest stuff. So we typed in rainforest. I just didn't add the T, sorry. And then we even went over here and selected third grade, so we made sure it was appropriate for her kids. So we looked through some of these and played around with some of them, and I think we were just playing to see, but she picked this one, the big word rainforest. It's a vocabulary lesson. And when you click on one, before you add it to your library, you can see if you like it. So I'm going to go through, she clicks through, look at some of the activities, and so let's pretend that she liked it. And we'll scroll down, and right here, we'll click on add to my library. So now it goes to my library. And now I'm going to go show in my library. So it takes me back to my library. And actually it brings me back to view the lesson. And let's pretend that I like this, but I just wanted to edit one part of it. So let's say I didn't like the wording on one of the things. So I'm going to click edit. I'm just going to edit the lesson. And let's pretend I did not want this quiz in the middle. So I'm going to click on it. I'll double click so I can see what it was. And maybe I don't like this quiz about what the rainforest has. So I'm going to cancel this. But I'm just going to click on the quiz and I'm going to delete it. And then let's pretend that Miss Roberts wants to add a VR experience to this, kind of like we had on the Susan B. Anthony. She could go to add slide. And when you go to add content, that's actually the virtual field trip stuff. We've got some PhET simulations, and we could talk about that later if you're interested. It's like online science experiments, and they've got some cool stuff for you to add, but she could add that. If she wanted to add a link to a website like a YouTube video, that's when she would click add web content and copy and paste the video there. And if she wanted to add an activity like another quiz or a draw it or matching pairs like we did, or a poll, she could do that as well. And we'll talk about some of these tools in our next session. Time to Climb is actually like a Kahoot. If you've ever used Kahoot, it's like that on Nearpod. But we're just going to pretend like she wanted to add a field trip. So I'm going to click here, and she wants to add something about the rainforest. I'm going to search. Give it just a second. Okay, there it goes. So let's pretend she wanted to go over here to this rainforest walk, and she adds it and she clicks done. So it adds it at the end, but then if she double clicks on it, she can see what the kids would see. And so this is the example that she added in. So that's how you add activities, delete activities. If you want to edit an activity, the only bad thing about Nearpod is if like I didn't like the way that this was worded, and I wanted it to say rainforests instead of rainforest. Anything with text on it like this, you can't edit straight out of Nearpod. You'd have to add in a new slide and make it yourself. But if you have trouble with that, just let me know. But let's pretend I liked this poll, but I didn't like the way it was worded. A way that you could edit that is you just double click on it. You go in and you would, maybe if I just didn't want to add this last sentence, I could delete it and click save. Now, let's pretend that you're completely finished. You like the lesson the way it is. You would click save and exit. And let's say it's the morning of that you're going to do this lesson and you are ready to launch it to your kids. So if you are going to control the lesson, kind of like I did for everybody, you would click live lesson. And this would pop up in your screen just like it did at the beginning. And your kids would just go to nearpod.com, or if they're on the iPads, they click on the Nearpod app and they click join lesson and they put in this code. They don't have to sign in. That's what I love about Nearpod, is they don't have to sign in or do anything like that. But let's pretend, because some people ask me about this too, that Miss Roberts doesn't want to do this as a whole group lesson and she wants to do it as a center and have her kids do it. If you don't want to control it and you want your kids to do it at their own pace, you would click on student pace. And then you would give the kids that code. I normally put it on a sticky note and put it by the iPads when they're at that center. And that's how they would join for the student pace one. Let's pretend, and I'll go to another one like that I actually have results on. So I'll go back to here. But let's pretend it's the end of the lesson and I want to look at some results. So I want to get the participation and all that. So if this is a lesson that I did, which is actually the one I did the other day for the training, I'm going to click here and I'm going to click reports. And it's going to show me, hey, like you did this session, this was on the 29th, and you had 8 students because I had 8 people come. And I like it because it shows me the general student participation, who participated, the answers on the quiz, the ratio, and I can go down. And the cool part about it to me, and you could go by activity depending on what kind of activities the kids did. I can even see like Miss Lott did this, Miss Everett made that coin, things like that. But if you want to do it just per kid, let's say you wanted to download it and send it to a parent, or if it's a graded paper and you're grading some of these activities, you go to downloads and you could do, instead of just the session view, you could do the student view. And let's say I pick Miss Lott and I can download just her thing and open it up. And it has her session report, which looks like this. It has her quizzes. So she only participated 29% of the time, yeah. And that's because it was just me and her, so we were going back and forth. But you can see all the responses to everything that they did. I think that's pretty much all I went over. If you guys have any more specific questions, please reach out to me. I really want to come into some classrooms and help you guys launch some of these just so I can answer all your questions. So if you just want to try one and you need some help, reach out. I'd love to come to your classroom and help you out. And I hope to see you guys at 102. Thanks.